Welcome to the SnoWest Show. I'm Ryan Harris. This is going to be a great episode. We rode the 2024 Ski-Doo lineup. It's been a couple weeks ago, and Broc, Genta, and I rode the 2024 Ski-Doo Freeride. Everything from the 146 2.5 turbo, the new Expert. You rode the first day with the mountain stuff, and then the next day. Man, I'm telling you what I rode. I did 118 miles an hour, and I was more scared doing that than I've ever been in the backcountry avalanche terrain. Like that new MXZ with the Turbo R in it and the water methanol injection.
Wow,
that thing was insane. I don't have what it takes to be a trail rider and ride that. And then that same second day, we went and rode the Grand Touring Electric e-sled.
Oh wow,
it's like it's fully electric. No, it's not a hybrid or anything. It's just completely electric, battery operated. We'll get into that. We'll hit on that a little bit later. But first, let me introduce who we've got in here today. We've got our SnoWest test staff. We've got 4 out of 5 of us anyway. We have Justin Stevens.
Yep.
Of Stevens Homes,
yep.
Formerly Motorfist, formerly kind of a brand manager and marketing manager for Motorfist. You've introduced yourself time and time again on these podcasts, but.
Yep.
But that's Justin Stevens there, part of the SnoWest test staff, been helping us out to snowshoot and on these sled tests for years. And then we have Rhett Clark to the right. Rhett Clark, you've been around helping us out for years. You're the guy that goes to Heydays with me and introduces me to people in the industry. Everybody's friend, everybody's buddy. Rhett Clark, and we have Broc, Genta. Broc has been helping us out on sled tests as well for a few years. Helped us out there for a while, and then you got kind of caught up in the Arctic Cat world. You were Arctic Cat regional sales rep. You weren't DSM, were you?
District sales manager.
Sales manager.
Regional district.
Oh, okay, district sales manager. Hawking Arctic Cats all over the place, left and right. And you got that job through your days at Motorfist,
right? Where I would be considered probably regional at Motorfist.
Yeah. So you and Justin were together at the same time at Motorfist, right? Back in the good old days.
Yep. I think we're still together today.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Still helps me out.
Look at that. And would you say you are a recovering Arctic Cat addict?
I would say I am a recovering Arctic Cat addict. I'm probably going back.
Oh, that catalyst!
Yep.
Like you're thinking
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm full on Arctic Cat
That
here.
catalyst ride that you guys went
on.
on without me, I'm still thinking I'm probably going to end up going back to being an Arctic Cat guy.
Well, you might. So next week is snowshoot, so you're going to get to ride it Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. We bring it home with us Tuesday night, the 3-inch.
So Broc's going to bring his pickup.
Broc's bringing his pickup.
So I'm bringing it home then.
Yeah.
Okay.
First in line. Hey, can I borrow the catalyst? Is the catalyst good this week?
Well, Bruce isn't here, so he can't call for it.
Yeah.
So I guess it's yours.
Yeah. Snooze you lose, farmer. So yeah, today we're talking about the 24 Ski-Doos, and the embargo was last night, so everything came out. We've had to sit on this, and normally we can go ride. You know, we went and did another brand intro in January, and you know, we can shoot our own content, and we can get our phones out and take photos and videos and kind of save that stuff for later and post it when the embargo lifts. We weren't really able to do that with the Ski-Doo stuff. Really kind of kept a tight lid on the new stuff coming out for 24. They did a good job. I didn't see anything leak, which is great for us, because I think if stuff leaked from anywhere, any outlet or any dealership or anywhere, it would kind of put an end to those early season rides that the media get to do. So I'm glad nothing made its way out there for that reason, because it is fun to get on these things early on. But yeah, we were up there a couple weeks ago, and Island Park, and phenomenal snow, right? Like it had snowed relatively recently. And a lot of stuff. Well, I actually think it snowed that night.
Yeah, it snowed the night before.
Yeah.
And like you said, Island Park's been getting hammered this year. So, I mean, there was a great base. We had new snow. It was ideal conditions for testing these mountain sleds.
Yeah. And there's a lot of good places to ride up there, but they tend to get hammered out anymore by everybody and their dog. You know, a lot of the Minnesotans and Wisconsins, all the tourists that come over this way, and then Utah, I think, plays a heavy role in that, coming up to Island Park and tracking everything out. But we've got a few great spots that are tough to get to that we went and found, and there weren't any tracks in there, and I think we had some pretty clean, fresh snow to do these evaluations in. So we started out. We kind of did this little walk around in the shop where they explain everything that's new, and they pull the covers off. They got 3 sleds in there that are covered: a 24 Summit X, a 24 Expert, and a 24 Freeride. And we hit on the Freeride first. They pull the cover off. And Frederick Desjardins, who is the snowmobile product manager for Ski-Doo, basically the guys who was in charge of developing this product and this product line and maintaining all the cool stuff that they do. His first thing was like, okay, we built this Freeride for the Cody McNulty's and the Jay Menenberries and the Blaine Matthews of the world, like super aggressive, hard riding. So Fred says that about the Freeride, and Jay's just over there in the corner, just rubbing his hands together like this, just as giddy as all get out, because this is what he's been asking for. So they go over the highlights. The Freeride basically is reworked a lot from last year. It seems like they've been going every year. They kind of focus on a model to kind of revamp. The Experts had the most attention for the last couple of years, and the Freeride gets a 15-inch wide track. So it's a 15-inch wide version of the Expert track, which is 16. It's not the Lynx 15 wide track, because the Lynx 15 wide track is actually 14 3/4 inches wide, and it's kind of a different lug pattern and different construction. Again, Lynx designs all their own stuff. Ski-Doo designs all their own stuff. They're both owned by BRP, but not really sharing the same.
I thought that was really cool too. Talking to Frederick and the engineers, they were very upfront, saying, they designed their own stuff, and we design our own stuff here, at BRP. And the track was one of the things I asked him about. I said, "Is it the same one as the Lynx?" And he was very adamant, saying, "No, it's our track. It's not Lynx track." So.
Yeah, it's almost funny because I think Ski-Doo and Lynx are more competitive with each other almost than like Ski-Doo and Polaris, because it's that internal battle, and it's like, okay, we have to work with you. Everybody thinks we're teammates, but we're not. Like, we're trying to outdo each other, so they really don't work together at all.
When we were at dinner that night, same thing kind of came up. Like, yeah, we are one, but we're not. We want to do things our way, and they want to do things their way. And yeah, that was a good point that they brought up, that we're different, but we're the same, but we're different.
Interesting.
And last year, you guys were there last year at Snowshoot when we met with them afterward, and we just kept talking about how cool the Lynx RE was. He was not happy.
Really?
He was just like, I don't want to hear about the Lynx. Talk about the Ski-Doo. We're doing the Ski-Doo. So anyway, they go 15 wide track on the Freeride. You can get a 15 wide in a 3-inch or a 2.5, and the Freeride you can get in a 165 3-inch, 154 3-inch, and 146 2.5, and also a 154 2.5. So a lot of track configurations there. We rode the 154 3-inch primarily. I mean, there was a 165 3-inch, but we didn't get much time on that. 154 3-inch turbo and a 146 2.5-inch turbo. And holy crap, those things were wild. Especially the 146, right?
146 was, it was crazy. It was fun. The fun factor was it was through the roof on that machine.
Yeah, because you think back like 18, 19, 20, and then 20 when the Summit Turbo came out, everything was like getting longer. We had 175s, and everything was like, okay, how do we get farther up the mountain? Factory Turbo comes out, and it's like, oh my gosh, imagine this thing on like a 175. But now we're going the opposite way. We're doing like factory turbos on 154s and 146s, and it's kind of across the board, not just Ski-Doo, but it's fun.
Yeah. I think you're seeing a lot of people move, like at least to the 155, 154. That track length, I think, is just a general preference right now. And so, I mean, the 146 might not be for everybody, but for somebody that's looking for something a little more playful than a 155, that probably fits that bill pretty well. So
Because you're
Good for
typically typically a 165 guy, would you
yeah,
say?
yeah. I've always kind of liked the 165, 163. But it's funny, even this last week when we rode, I actually really enjoyed the 155, at least in those tight trees that we were in. Just easier to get around. They got plenty of power. You got plenty of lift. I wasn't short anything, and then I guess you get shorter track, lighter weight. So
Yeah, and man, it just seems like everything is trending shorter again. And my theory, I don't know why. I have no idea really why.
Yeah.
And Arctic Cat kind of started this whole 146 thing several years ago. I mean, credit to your boys, right? He's on his phone. We're gonna put your phone in my pocket for you.
There's a reason why.
I know.
I'm usually not. There's some pressing going on at home, so just forgive me today.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, got to get her home. But the 146 movement, I would give that credit to Arctic Cat. Like they came out with that on the Ascender 3 years ago, I want to say. Really went to a 3-inch. Did they have a 3-inch 146 or was there a 2.6?
It was a 2.6.
Okay.
And it still is a 2.6.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
They don't have a 146.3.
So 146 2.6 on the Ascender platform. And so you would watch their backcountry guys, their Black Cats, ride the 146s for the last few years and just how wild their stuff would be. And then you see, hold on, I got the same problem.
Right?
everybody do a phone check. What you got going on, Rhett?
We need to pause the pod for a minute here and everybody get on top of the business. But yeah, the 146 stuff is just, so my theory is the big long track mountain sleds were a different style of riding, and the whole idea for that, for the last 10 years has been, and I want the longest, biggest, baddest, most power to get to that point on the mountain. I mean, I don't want to be turned away because of lack of sled, and we've achieved that. Like on a 165 turbo 3-inch track, you can go about anywhere you dare go, and you're in terrain. The moment that it's snowing, it's a pretty dangerous aspect of it as well, because you're in terrain that's pretty unstable as it's becoming more unstable. But
Right.
But I think everybody's kind of like experienced that and like, okay, yeah, we've had long tracks, we've had factory turbos, we've had 3-inch tracks, we've had 175s. That was cool. I want to go back to the days where the sled was a handful. And it was kind of wild to ride, and I can't get that far because I have to ride this thing and control it a little more, and it's a more playful, fun ride. And that's where I see us going back 146s, 154s.
Yeah.
The longer tracks, we were getting those to get up on the snow and stay afloat. And credit to the manufacturers now with the 146s, the 155s, they're actually making those so they're staying up and float, and they're getting up on the snow really, faster than the longer tracks were doing it.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because man, you talk about the Polarises or you talk about the Ski-Doos, like the way these sleds can just get on top and plane out, like I don't know,
night and day difference between just even 2 years ago from both of those manufacturers.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
And Cat, like before Cat went to the Alpha Skid, that thing would go down, like cut down. Everything was cutting down and trenching.
Right.
And this was all when everything had big snow flaps on it. We were kind of dropping anchor and holding ourselves back as we were trying to come up with technology to get us up on top of the snow better. But all of that shift to no snow flaps, shorter tunnels, this all kind of helps sleds get up on top of the snow. But anyway, we take off from the cabin. On these new, what were you on when we left? Were you on a Freeride?
I wasn't a Freeride. I was on an Expert, a naturally aspirated 850, 165.
Okay, so you're on the new Expert. I was on the 154 turbo Freeride, and we were just in that same spot last week. You've got, I don't know, a couple miles of pretty brutal moguls.
Yeah,
like
don't ride them too up.
Yeah. Dirty Dancing theme song comes to my mind. But it's a brutal section of trail, and it's because we try to avoid any of the groom trail where we go. In this little spot we were trying to get to, you're limited by how close the trees are together, because they have to go through this stuff. And I think every zone has this from Colorado to BC has some of this regardless, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has that
at
single
least,
track
at
goat
least a
trail.
little bit. So
Absolute rough, big square edged moguls, and I'm telling you what, that free ride. So it's got 40 millimeter piston shocks all the way around. All 4 shocks are 40 millimeter, which is different than the Expert, which is I believe 36.
I think 36 front.
And different even than the Lynx. The Lynx RE was 36. The Lynx DS was 36. The Lynx RE has 46 millimeter track shocks. So bigger volume track shocks, but 36 millimeter ski shocks. So the Freeride has overall probably 40 millimeter shock shafts or pistons on the front ski shocks, 40 millimeter pistons on the rear track shocks. It's got a lot of shock on that sled. And this is something that I feel like the mountain segment of the sled industry has lacked for a long time, is that premium tier of suspension.
Yeah.
And I honestly think it's because engineers just look at it like, oh man, you guys are riding in deep powder, you don't need suspension.
Soft snow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you can use just the basic, cheap, small shocks. But we, as mountain riders, you're hitting this crap. You're riding rough terrain all the time. And as the season changes, you're riding firm snow, soft snow, deep powder, bottomless stuff, hard stuff, ice crust. Like you're riding the full gamut.
Well, and to the point of the shorter track sleds, I mean that then people are jumping them more and doing more with them that would maybe require a little better suspension setup. So
yeah.
Maybe that's pushing it a little bit too
Well,
benefit.
I think so for sure. Like, the Maverick Walkers of the world are on 46s and doing crazy stuff. And I think they need, and Andreas Bergmark on his Lynx,
Right.
he's riding a Shredder RE with the big burly suspension. And that's kind of what that sled's built for. And I think that was the gap that Ski-Doo had in their lineup that they tried to fill with the Freeride. And I think they nailed it.
That's awesome.
What did you think? So you started out on the Expert. Talk about that one for a minute.
I was actually coming down out of the hills on the 146, and I was kind of excited to take it through the whips. And then Ryan all of a sudden stops and gives me a long track and takes it down through the whips. And then on the way up, he was on the 154 free ride. So I was I was on a long track basically, a 165 on the way in and the way out through the whoops. So. And
hey,
yeah.
I was doing you a favor. Sometimes those long tracks can bridge that crap.
Right, yeah.
No, that 154 that I was on, going through the whoops on the way up. Ski-Doos have gotten better in the whoops, but they've never been like the sled to have in the whoops.
Right. Yeah, there's a little death wobble when you're on a Ski-Doo coming through some of those whoops. But I think the geometry, the new geometry on the spindle, is supposed to help with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's talk about spindle geometry. That changed on just the Freeride. That new spindle is not on anything else. It's just on the Freeride. And basically all it is it increases the trail. So it brings the ski pivot bolt back farther. So as the sled is tracking, it has more of a tendency to keep the bar straight. But if you get off trail, it's a little more effort to get it to turn. Like Fred was joking around in that, in the presentation we were watching, that the guys that ride the free arms have bigger arms and bigger shoulders, so they can typically handle it. But yeah, so that the spindle made a huge difference. I mean, that thing tracked really well, and going through those moguls on the way up to the mountain, I was hitting that harder and harder and harder, trying to, anticipating what the Expert does, because I've been on the Expert all year for the last couple of years. The Expert has really good suspension. In fact, when the red and white Expert came out, there's another really bumpy trail over by Two Top that we run. It's a good test course. Really rough. It's not groomed. It's that same single track goat trail stuff that gets hammered out. And the Expert was really good at that. Best Ski-Doo I had ever ridden at bumps. I was like, finally, you guys got it figured out. And then jump 4 years forward, the Freeride just blows that thing away. And I think it's the shock volume, it's the damping, it's the valving inside the shock, it's the ski. The Freeride shares the same ski as the Expert, which is a more aggressive, deeper keel ski, and then the spindle, where it has that trail, that increased trail. Like, I don't feel that skiddiness that a Ski-Doo typically has on bumps and in moguls, and because it's a 36-inch front end, not a 34-inch front end. It's a little more stable in that stuff. An expert is great in the bumps until it's not.
Right.
But by the time you realize it's not,
You're in trouble.
you're not going where you wanted to go anymore.
Right.
So bumps, the Freeride is just phenomenal. Like that thing just blows everything else out of the water in the Ski-Doo lineup. I'm excited for Snowshoe because there's a couple other sleds out there I want to compare it to. But I haven't ridden a Ski-Doo turbo, especially a turbo, that has done that well in rough stuff.
That's awesome.
and they've gotten really good in the last few years, but the Freeride is just phenomenal in that stuff. So then we get out of that stuff and we start climbing. We're in the mountains, we're in the trees, kind of cutting our own trails in, and we're riding this windblown ridge, same ridge that we had where all those logs and sticks are sticking up. Riding that windblown stuff and just kind of blitzing through the trees, and the harder you hit stuff on that Freeride, the better it does. Like it's not timid at all. Like it'll take.
Yeah, I was able to ride it through that on the way down, and like you said, it just eats it up. Those hard windblown bumps and stumps, you just bounce right over them.
Yeah, and you can skim them, and then if you start trying to do some rhythm, you'll double or triple a couple of those moguls, and then you'll nose in. But man, if you nose into one that's really firm, like typically you're gonna feel it in your wrists.
Yep.
It's a pretty jarring effect. But on the Freeride, it would just absorb it. Like there was never that jar. Like every time you skim it on anything else, you double and you have that rhythm, and you just expect this jar on every bump.
That's awesome.
And the Freeride would just kind of absorb it and then load up. And as long as you could hang on, because there could be some G-force and rider fatigue and all that. I don't know.
Yeah.
As long as you can hang on, man, that thing will absorb and just load up and pop out. Did you play with the clickers at all on that?
I didn't play with the clickers. Nope, I just left it how it was.
So it's a 3-position compression clicker. There's no rebound adjustment. It's all compression, and it's basically it's like a low, medium, hard, soft, medium, hard. And I started out with it in the firm, and when we were going through that really rough stuff, I started out with it in the second position, so medium. And when we were going through that rough stuff, I dialed it up to 3. And 3 was phenomenal. Like that 3 is where it just would not bottom. It was plush. It would absorb. So when we got back to the trailer and we were talking to their suspension guys, I think one of us made the comment, like, I think you can bump your range up, make what is currently medium, make that your low, and then have a little firmer 3 position. But I don't know where they'll go from there. But 1 is really plush. The soft setting is really plush. But if you get into that hard square edged, hard back mogul stuff,
That'd be enough. Yep.
2 and 3 is where it's at on there. So then we get out all this rough stuff and we get up into the trees and it's deep snow and we're dropping into some big holes, and that's where I really felt the 15 wide track
On the Freeride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting thing because we've ridden 16 wide tracks on Ski-Doos for, when did that come out? Decade.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
It's
been
been
a
a
while.
long time.
Where they've kind of had the market on that 16 wide. And I think it gives them a leg up on flotation, and it helps the Ski-Doo, even though it's heavier than a Polaris, it helps the Ski-Doo keep the rear end up on top of the snow and, like you were talking about earlier, plane out. The one advantage that, the 15 wide Freeride track had was it just spooled up really quick. Would you say it was really responsive just because there's a little bit less rotating mass.
I've got to agree with you. I didn't feel like I was losing any traction with the narrower track.
Yeah.
Because it must be the track speed. I don't know, but it felt really good.
Yeah, and maybe if you get into that coastal BC snow, where it's just insanely deep, maybe there you would. But I think the 15 wide track gives the Freeride a couple advantages. Track speed, lower inertia, so it accelerates quicker. But yeah, overall track speed, like the turbo on the Freeride R, because all their engineers were riding with this, and I remember coming back from that first little area where we were all kind of splitting up and going off and riding and coming back and thinking, man, this thing runs hotter than our model year 23 Expert Turbo.
It felt like it.
Yeah. And they're like, no, same
motor,
same calibration, same turbo, same boost.
I wish they'd had a 154 expert there as well with a turbo, so we could compare them back to back.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
We spent a lot of time on that 154 Freeride, but that would have been really good to have a 154.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Expert.
That would have been nice to go back and forth on. But I think what we're feeling there, Freeride to expert, was just a lot of the track inertia. You go 16 wide to a 15 wide track, it'll spool up quicker, and then it'll maintain a higher track speed just because there's less rotating mass, right? But the Freeride just, man, that thing was pretty wild, like incredibly.
Did they give you a weight difference between the tracks?
They did. I don't know if I wrote that down. I'd have to go. I might have it written down somewhere.
I think you videoed it.
Was it? Yeah, it was in the video.
I think you videoed. It is a little bit lighter, and I don't know the exact numbers.
Yeah, I want to say like 5 to 6 pounds. The weight difference, 15 to 6. No, is it that much?
I don't think it was that much. I think
No.
like 3 or 4 pounds.
Yeah, 3 or 4 pounds. 3 or 4 pound weight difference from 16 to 15.
Still rotating mass.
But yeah. And, well, it's a big. The farther away you get from center on rotating mass, the more inertia.
Yeah.
So you take a track that's rotating that long, and take that much weight off. That's a pretty significant change.
So between the 146 and the 154 in the Freeride, you had both those, right? Both turbos. Could you tell the difference between those in the trees? Was one more comfortable than the other? Or?
The 54 Freeride turbo with the 3-inch track was probably a little more predictable and a little more stable. The 146 Freeride turbo with the 2.5 track, you were just wheeling.
Yeah.
Like there was nothing but wheeling. You could park and have the skis on the ground, but if you were moving, you were just wheeling. And that was fun because you were just riding the rear end of the track, and like that's where I just came back from that. And I'm like, man, this shorter sled stuff is honestly some of the most fun I've had snowmobiling in the last 10 years. Because I'm not trying to throw around and muscle around a lot of snowmobile anymore, but I'm just trying to hang on.
Yeah, it didn't feel heavy at all. It just it felt light, it felt nimble, and we were following each other, through the same shitholes that we were taking the long tracks through.
Yeah,
the snow was deep, and it was just a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree. And that 146, man, you could kind of pick your way through, and get off and on the throttle and have that thing come up. But man, once you kind of found your line, you would just get on the throttle and that thing would just kind of stand up, and you were just steering with your feet, and you could modulate the throttle, let it down a little bit, and just lower the nose a touch. It's like boating with a boat that doesn't plane out, And you could just control how high the nose was. Like it wasn't anything more than that. It was just controlling the attitude of the nose.
Awesome.
Little brake tap here.
Did you feel did you feel like the 146 washed out at all, and the hillside, like side hilling and things, or?
Yeah, for sure. Like
a little bit.
The shorter track, just that's one of the disadvantages is if you're trying to carve a pretty nasty, long, technical side hill, like you got to have your weight a little more further forward.
Yeah.
And it's interesting on the Freeride because it's a wider front end and a narrower track than an expert, and you can feel that at times. You can feel like, oh, this is a lot more sled to get on its side. But the 15 wide track, I think, helps. Like it bridges the gap. If they would have done everything about the Freeride that they did for 24 except left a 16 wide track on it, I think it would be harder to initiate.
Right.
Because you're tipping over a wider track, so your leverage is a little farther out from center.
Well, and again, I mean, this, like you said, this sled, the 146, probably built like Jay Menaberry specific. So, and I actually think I talked to Jay once about the Ski-Doo, and I think I was saying something about how the nose is always in the air or something like that. And he's like, well, that's what I love about it. He's like, if I'm coming up to a tree, I can just lift the front end up, turn it around, and set it back. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, I don't know if that's how I was planning on coming back around that tree.
Yeah.
But, for Jay, I mean, that's how he rides. So, I mean, whether or not it holds that side hill or is more playful, I guess, is definitely preference and rider ability, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I guess it comes down to your riding style and skill set because, a guy like Jay, like you say, he's going everywhere a lot faster than most people are going. And so if you're not a Jay Menaberry and you're trying to pick a tree line, a pretty technical line, you're doing it with skis on the ground and you're using the full length of the sled to hold on to the mountain and change direction. And Jay is just up on the tail, just like all these quick turns and responding really quick. And
Yeah.
so when I remember when the 16 wide track first came out on the Ski-Doo, their big tagline was, our 155 16 wide track is the same footprint as their 15 wide 165.
Right.
So,
But were they including that flex edge and the T-motion stuff in that, or
I don't know.
because it wasn't the same footprint, was it?
Not necessarily, no.
But maybe with the flex edge and that, they were kind of saying we have the same amount of track on the ground.
Yeah, just a little.
Or,
Yeah, just a little more square inches touching the snow,
I see.
basically overall.
Yeah.
But when you're on the side, when you're on a side hill, which anymore, that's pretty much all you're doing. You're on your left, you're on your right all the time. You're hardly ever just flat. The 16 track, I don't think you're getting the full benefit of it anymore.
right.
In deep snow, like the Expert, that's a distinction to make. Like the Expert and the Freeride are kind of intended toward two very different riders.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are like the very technical terrain and you want to be able to pick and choose where you're going and be really precise about it, the Expert's probably the better setup. But if you want, like, if you love going to the carnival or the fair and you throw down $100 on some tickets and you're like, just put me on the wildest ride out there and I just want to hang on.
Over and over.
That's a free ride. Yeah. That's awesome. The free ride.
So both of those, an Expert and a Freeride, are built towards a very specific, like an aggressive rider, versus somebody who's going to ride an Adrenaline or a Summit X.
Yeah. So if you look at the full lineup, so there used to be the Summit SP. That's now called the Adrenaline, and that's like full tunnel length with the big snow flap. Like that's your total base model, like almost rental outfit. And then from there you have the Adrenaline Edge. We've had the Summit Edge for a few years, so now it's the Adrenaline Edge, and that's an in-season model. The Adrenaline and the Adrenaline Edge are both in-season. You can buy them, walk into a dealership, and pick them off the floor. But the Edge has the shorter tunnel and some of the Expert-ish upgrades to it. And then you have X, Expert, and Freeride, and all three of those are spring order only. Like you got to put your name down on them early and go put your deposit on to get those. The X would be, that's probably what I would put my older brother or my dad on. You know, it's easier to initiate because it's the only one that has the T-Motion Flex. You were talking about the
T-Motion X.
We got to sit down with these guys and help them brainstorm some new rear suspension names.
Yeah.
Because I think everybody has in their mind T-Motion means flex.
When I hear T-Motion, I think of that flex, and I personally, that's not something I care for. So that's why I was saying earlier, maybe it's time to drop that or rename or maybe come up with something new. I don't know.
Yeah. So there's T-Motion is the Summit rear suspension. T-Motion X is the flex. So
Okay.
the Summit X, the Edge, and the Adrenaline all have T-Motion X, which means that rear suspension pivots. And then T-Motion XT is what's in the Expert and Freeride, which does not pivot. It's a rigid skid.
Right.
Just full-on typical rigid skid. But yeah, the naming gets confusing on there, and it's hard enough for us to keep track of it. I can't imagine like the general customer that's trying to sort all this out. But
like you said, somebody that maybe could use that a little bit easier initiation of a turn and stuff, that would come in handy with the Flex Edge and the actual T-Motion X, right?
T-Motion X, yeah. So T-Motion X, you get the Flex skid plus the Flex Edge track.
Right. Okay.
So, and the Summit X is the lightest one in the lineup too. Like it's lighter than the Freeride. It's lighter than the Expert. Probably 5 pounds lighter than the Expert, I think is about what they're saying. So if you want the lightest Ski-Doo mountain sled, it's going to be the Summit X. But if you want a little more precise, predictable, rigid feel, you were saying you like that Flex Edge stuff.
Yeah. And I like the Expert package also, but there's certain times that maybe you get a little bit lazy, not as aggressive that day, and that T-Motion's awesome. Like it's just easier to ride, easier to initiate side hill, and if you're on a steeper hill or something more aggressive, you want to hold a more aggressive line, then the expert package is probably the better way to go.
Yeah.
A narrower front end, right? So the expert's a 34, so the X is a 36, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think T-Motion X is fun to ride, and it's easier to ride for a lot of people. I think there's a little bit of a learning curve that some people.
No, the X is 34-inch also.
It is now.
Yeah, so the X is the narrower front end.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, so the Freeride has the 36-inch front end, and the Expert and the X both have 34-inch.
Okay.
So yeah, and I got on the X. I got on that one right there, that tan one. I like it, and I was a huge fan of the Gen 4 and the XM before the Gen 4 because of the flex edge track and the T-Motion flex suspension. I really liked it, but since the Expert has come out with the rigid skid, I lean that way. Like, I have a hard time getting back on the X because it's like, okay, this is like, it's not as predictable and precise as the Expert. And so when I do get it to come over, it doesn't track. Like, once it's on edge, because that track is flexing just a little bit, it doesn't drive exactly where I want it to go. But the X is easier to flop it over on its side, especially where it's the narrower front end now. Did you jump on? You were on the X for a little bit, weren't you? What do you think about that?
I thought it was still a very, very capable sled. It felt, it was definitely easier to get on its side, but it was going, it was going everywhere that I wanted it to go. So, yeah, like Rhett said, it's a great sled still, and it goes wherever you want it to go. And then if you're wanting to kind of chill out one day, there you go. That's that's the sled for you. Unless you're wanting to just push hard every time.
I think snow conditions affect like the way the suspension handles a lot. Mm-hmm. So deeper snow will mask a lot of things. So you get in more spring setup snow. I think probably the Expert package is a better way to go. As far as holding the side hill, things like that. It's on a more aggressive chassis. You're not going to get so much flex that you'd feel more with that T-Motion X. So deeper snow masks a lot of things. You can ride pretty much anything when it's bottomless powder. So
yeah, everything feels light in deep snow. But I agree with you. Like in firm spring snow, like the Expert's a little sketchy for me. Like the skis are really aggressive and it's a narrow front end. The X probably takes some of that bite away, makes it a little more forgiving, I would say. But I don't know. So the X, so you got your 3 spring order packages, right? You've got the X, Expert, and Freeride. The X for 24 changes that it got were the adjustable brake lever and the adjustable limiter strap. So that's the only upgrades for 24. The Expert got a new master cylinder. It's all aluminum, not plastic. So they were able to get rid of the aluminum cover on the plastic master cylinder. And then that master cylinder is a little more inboard so that the lever can move inboard a little more. Right. So that when you're just covering it with one finger, it's in a better position.
Nice.
A little more feel, a little more control. And then what on the Freeride, what did you feel ergo-wise and just body positioning-wise compared to the Expert? Do you feel anything different?
I felt I had to be a little bit more. I felt I had to be at first a little bit more aggressive to get it to initiate. Mm-hmm. But once I got used to it's really weird. Once I got used to the track speed and how fast it was, I didn't have to actually do as much effort because I would use more track speed to get the sled tipped on its side.
Yeah.
So, yeah, where it's the same chassis, I was riding it in the same spot. But as far as getting it to initiate at first, I felt it was a little bit harder. But then once I got used to throttle control, it actually wasn't any harder to get on its side. But we were in good snow.
Yeah.
So,
and I agree with that because it took a little, like there's a little bit of trust factor you got to build with the sled. Like how hard do I have to work to get this thing to cut and bite and turn and lean? And the X is probably the the least amount, but it's also like once it comes over, it can kind of do a lot of different things. It's not necessarily going to do exactly what I want it to do. When the Freeride comes over, though, like exactly when it's over on edge, it's going to stay exactly where you want it. So I think you can hit it a little harder. You can be a little more aggressive with it and do make your initiations and your cuts with a little more speed, just because when it comes over, it's going to stay and it's a little more controllable. Probably with that rigid skid, but the 15 wide track helps that thing like at high speed. That goes back to inertia, track weights. If you've got a 16 wide track, it's going to be a little harder at speed to get that to lean just because of the gyro effect. And so you take a little bit of mass out of that, and now that thing will lean slightly less effort, but slightly easier. So the 15 wide track is really cool on that.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of engineering that goes into this concept of if you got a 15-inch wide track versus a 16, you got a 34, 36 front end, the length of the track. I mean, there's obviously some changing in the actual contact points where a sled comes over. I mean, it's kind of interesting because like Broc's talking, you get your throttle, you got the position of the skis, where this one actually sets forward. That probably changes that geometry just a little bit. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, kudos to the Ski-Doo guys. I think it's awesome to see something like even the spindle idea. I don't know where that came from exactly, but just to use my truck for example, I've had some alignment work done on that. And I know that the one guy that I talked to, he actually moved the tires forward. He says that lengthens just a little bit, changes the actual action of the suspension, and it took kind of that little bit of wobble down the road. And I don't know, I think that's cool versus like a blue or a red. I mean, it's cool that there's, that's one thing that I think Ski-Doo does a great job. I love that when we ride and talk to them, they're always looking for something new, something better, and so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so you've got your three main models, X, Expert, and Freeride, that are quite different.
Yeah.
Like different rear suspensions, different track widths, different spindles, enough different between all three of them to really have to make sure that you shop and study these machines before you go buy them.
Yeah.
Like you say, a lot of guys just buy based on color.
Yeah.
And they're picking models because that color combo on that model is better, but it's not really what they want. And I think we've had a problem in the mountain segment for a while of everybody just wants the coolest one out there.
Yeah, they just want to buy what Jay's riding or what Caleb's riding, just exactly what they're riding. But they need to do their homework and actually find the sled that is going to be set up for the style of riding that they do.
Yeah. Like how many guys did you see go buy Lynxes this year? And then they're like, well, there's no rear bumper on it. And why is this thing so hard to steer? And why is it harder to side hill?
Right.
Because it's a jump sled made in Finland for people that ride on concrete. Like they don't need rear bumpers over there. They don't get stuck. And they can get away with a really more aggressive, longer, flatter ski because they're not really in it for flotation. They're in it for bridging bumps. Like that's the whole point behind the Lynx ski is to bridge bumps. It's more of a race type ski. But you've got everybody that just wants that. And I think people are starting to realize like, okay, I've really got to figure out like which tool is the best for what I want to do.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
So saying that, what are you going to buy, after riding these three?
Or
you, Broc?
That's a good question because I loved the 2023 Expert. In fact, we did an Expert Turbo and an Expert NA. I didn't get a Freeride. I didn't get an X for 23. It was all Expert because I love it. Going into 24, I tell you right now, I'm going to order a Freeride Turbo, and it might even be a 146.
I think
because that thing was so fun. And maybe it'll be two Freerides, but I think I'm going with the Freeride this year. Like if I'm picking one, and that's going to be my sled to ride and own, it's going to be a Freeride, just because it does most of what the Expert does, and what it doesn't do is enough of a compromise that I'm fine with it. It might be a little harder in a couple situations, and what it does better just puts a smile on your face. Higher track speed, little quicker spin up, a little more responsive.
Just more fun.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, last year on the Ski-Doos that we had, I spent a lot of time on the Freeride. That's the one that Ryan's just like, yeah, go ride this and go put some miles on it. You need to learn how to ride a Ski-Doo. So I spent a lot of time on that Freeride. And now that they've brought this Freeride and we started riding this 24, I think I would probably choose either a 154 or 146 Freeride. If I was a consumer, I'd probably buy a 154 just because it's more versatile. It can do more things, for my style of riding. But like Ryan said, the fun factor on that 146 where we were at was, it was through the roof.
See, that's the problem with the track links. It's like, yeah, I should just get an F-150 because I can do everything I need to do in a day.
Except
for the year with an F-150. But man, I want a Raptor for the weekends. So I agree with you. A 154 3-inch is like from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, that's probably going to be better suited to what I'm doing. But man, if I can get by on 146 turbo, the times where that sled lights up, oh my gosh, that's going to be fun.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The fun factor on that sled is, it was funner than the 154, but I'd probably buy a 154 because I don't know, I could use it all year.
Yeah,
even on deep snow days, you're still going to be able to roll on that 154.
I will say too that if I did get the 146 turbo, I'm only riding 2 hours at a time.
I was going to ask that. I was
Like,
going to say,
it's
are you
severely-
talking like 10 minutes?
Yeah, it severely impacts. Yeah,
For that 10 minutes that you're on the 146 turbo, it's awesome.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
you wore out.
Same experience that we had in Afton
Yeah.
in January. Like if I'm on a 146, it's going to impact the length of my ride because I'm going to get worn out in a hurry.
But you have a lot of fun in a short amount of time.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
okay.
so flipping fun. So that's something. I mean, that's definitely something to consider. Is like, do you want just a play sled or do you want a sled that does it all?
I think we're going to call it the Carnival now.
Yeah. Yeah, circus ride.
The circus ride. That's what it was, circus.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's, for the last little segment here, we posted on SnoWest Magazine's Instagram account some, ask us a question. This was after all of this stuff released, so everybody was able to go on and look at all the new updates and everything. So let's, Justin, you want to run through some of those?
Yeah, let's see. Here's from Tyler Nay. Are the front skis required? Never mind. Are the front skis required on the 146 turbo?
No.
No. You can take them off and leave them in the trailer.
That's awesome. What differences do you notice with the 15-inch track versus the 16-inch?
Yeah, I think we covered that.
Covered that quite a bit.
Yeah.
Spool up, like low inertia. It feels more responsive, like in the same way that a 9R feels more responsive than an 850 because everything they did to the 9R is lower rotating mass, less inertia. The Freeride, because of the 15-inch track, feels the same way. It's snappier, it's more responsive, feels like a race sled, and then higher track speed. So everything is wilder because it's a narrower track.
Here's one that might be good to answer. Why no 165 on the Freeride?
Oh, that's an easy answer because there is a
There is
165.
one,
That was
yeah.
a typo.
Right on. Chain case update, ?
That I don't know. I don't know anything about a chain case update. I remember some stuff, but
They didn't mention anything about a chain case update.
yeah, I
Okay.
think it's all pretty similar.
I think we kind of covered this one too. Did they only do these spindles for the Freeride and not the Summit Expert? But we've kind of talked about that.
Correct. It's only that spindle is only on the Freeride.
Freeride only.
And if you put that spindle on an Expert, it's going to take away some of the Expert's good abilities because the Expert is more of like in the deep snow, in the mountains, in the technical terrain. That's where the spindle that's currently on the Expert makes that thing handle really well. It just makes it a little sketchier on hardback and bumpy stuff.
Okay. Hickory Creek Inc. How does it compare to riding a Pro RMK?
You take that one because you were just on the 9R.
I'd say no comparison. They're not the same.
Yeah.
They feel different. At least for me, when I ride a Pro RMK Chaos, it's a totally different ride than the Summit chassis or the Freeride chassis, Expert chassis.
Yeah, and we obviously get that question probably more than anything because Polaris guys are tempted and they're like, okay, what Ski-Doo is closest to a Polaris? But they're so flipping different, and mainly because of the steering. You got lay down steering versus vertical steering. So they handle completely different. It forces your body position to do things totally different.
Right. But I will say this, if you're looking at getting, a different brand of snowmobile than you're used to riding, don't base it off of going out and, playing in the meadow on your buddy's, Ski-Doo, for 30 minutes and saying, it's a piece of garbage. It's going to take you a couple days to get used to it. But once you get used to that snowmobile, your body will adapt to the snowmobile.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, and that's something I think you've learned because you being an Arctic Cat guy,
Right.
Compared everything to Arctic Cat. And I think Polaris guys compare everything to their Polaris, and naturally so. Like that's just what you would do.
Well, yeah, even the other day when we rode, I probably spent the first half of the ride, a couple hours on the Ski-Doo, and hadn't.
Did you like it? Hold on.
Yeah, but that's what I was going to say. I've kind of been down on it, but honestly, I was like, huh. I'm like, I actually it was going where I wanted it to go. The power input, like everything, I really enjoyed it. So it was kind of funny actually to get back on the Polaris after that and feel that difference because I probably haven't spent enough time on the Ski-Doo.
So I mean, there's some similarities there. The Freeride has a 15 wide track and a 36-inch front end. So does the Polaris.
Yeah.
But other than that, that's kind of where it ends.
That's it.
And the Ski-Doo has its own feel, and the Polaris has its own feel.
Yeah.
And the Freeride within the Ski-Doo lineup, the Freeride has its own feel compared to the Expert and X.
Interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see that next week. DS Bork, does the 15-inch track sleds have narrower tunnels?
No.
No, same tunnel.
And maybe that's the next thing they do. I mean that's millions of dollars in tooling right there. But if they also narrowed up the tunnel, would it be worth it?
Yeah.
Because they can't narrow up where your feet are because the clutches. And from clutch to chain case, like that's a fixed width regardless of the track width. But they could narrow up the tunnel so you're not. It comes
back.
Yeah, so you're a little bit
more tapered.
I don't know if it'd be worth the money on the investment, but maybe it would.
What are you gaining?
Yeah.
The tunnel comes in an inch. An inch isn't that much.
Yeah, and I'll tell you on the Freeride, I did it on the 154 and I did it on the 146. Like just. I'm riding along and I'm just in a full on wheelie and I'm picking my line through the trees and I just kind of lose my line, and you just stay on the throttle and the thing it doesn't dig down, like the track doesn't go down into the snow, it just goes up and over. And so you need to be like off to one side or the other. You don't want to be like going straight up the hill when you run out of somewhere to go, because that thing will just stand up and flop right back onto the snow. So you want to be like turned a little bit, but I don't know where a narrower tunnel would come into play on that, because we're no longer down in the snow.
Right.
It'd just be almost comfort, if anything.
Yeah. Which, who's to say that the wider isn't a little more comfortable rather than getting narrow where you don't have anywhere to put your feet? I don't know. Unless it actually turns into more foot placement. So, 920 Builds LLC. Any rumors of a belt drive in the future? Thought maybe it'd be this year.
I don't think Ski-Doo likes belt drives. I think they're pretty confident in a durable chain drive. That's kind of their angle.
Here's one from Broc star Genta. Who is more full of shit, Justin Stevens or Bruce Curtis?
Oh, man. How did that one get through the filter?
How did that one get through?
I don't know the answer to that one.
Well, it's got to be Curbs because he didn't show up.
Yeah, definitely Curbs.
Got to be Curbs.
He should have come, huh? Let's see. Oh, here's one. You talked about this earlier. Lane P18. Can I buy an electric Grand Touring?
Yeah. So yeah, I was going to hit on that after we did the questions, but so we did 2 days of intro with Ski-Doo. The first day was mountain. The second day was trail. Second day, rode the MXZ Turbo R, which is an absolute rocket. I'm sorry, trying to have breathing issues here. So rode the MXZ Turbo R, and I'm talking about that one before I get the electric Grand Touring, just because that's what we rode over. And that MXZ, it's got water methanol injection, just because how do they, on a mountain sled you can keep everything cool because you're in deep snow most of the time. Like you're cooling the coolers and it's bringing down the operating temp of the engine. On a trail sled, you don't have that luxury. Like you can generate a lot of heat without much cooling whatsoever. Right. So rather than use like an intercooler, they came up with water methanol injection, which is not new, but it's new to a 2-stroke turbo. It's something from the diesel days. Methanol basically keeps the water from freezing. There's other additives in their mix for corrosion and everything. But it's basically injecting water into the intake air to bring down the temperature, which cools the engine and maintains the horsepower level.
Interesting.
It's really cool. So anyway, that thing's an absolute rocket. Faster than I really care to go at this age on trees with power poles and other snowmobiles. And yeah, that was absolutely insane. But anyway, so we ride over to the West Yellowstone Airport, and they take us in to this hangar, and we get off all of our stuff. And we figure we're just going in for lunch. And they don't let us inside. And it's like 2 degrees. It was cold. And they don't let us go inside. And they're like, hey, everybody take your helmets off too. I'm like, what? So we're all standing out in the cold to take our helmets off. They've got video cameras going. We're standing around like we're in one of those Chevy commercials where, they bring out the new whatever. And this you hear just this sliding on the ice, like this little skittering sound. And this white electric snowmobile just comes boogieing around the corner and pulls up in front of us. And it is just dead silent. Just completely silent. And it's the new Grand Touring electric, fully electric. And they let us ride him. So first off, before we go down the electric snowmobile path, I've just got to say that nobody is going to roll up, and surround your house in Subaru Foresters and take away your internal combustion engines. That's not the direction that this is going. Right. They are trying to fill a void for rental fleets where they can get rid of the maintenance and the expense and the mess. And so basically this Grand Touring Electric is a rental fleet snowmobile. You can't even buy one next year if you wanted to anyway. It's only being built for rental outfits. And the thing is speed limited. When we rode it, there's 2 keys. So the DSS tether is a key, which changes the fuel, basically it changes the, not fuel map, but it's because it's all electric. It's more like an RC car, if anything. So they did say that the battery is up front, like where the engine and the exhaust would be, like under the hood. They didn't let us look at it. They wouldn't take the side panels off or anything. So the battery is up there in the engine compartment, and then it's a direct drive. So there's an electric motor that mounts to the jack shaft and then turns the chain case and then drives the track. Yeah, so there's no clutch. That's pretty weird to think about. No CVT system, no clutches. Just an electric motor mounted on the jack shaft, turns the track. Because you don't need that, because with electricity, like I don't know if you've driven Teslas and it's the same deal.
There's no shifting.
There's no shifting, but you can have 5% power, you can have 20% power, you can have 100% power, and it's as linear as you want to make it with your programming. So anyway, this thing had pretty short range, like 35-mile range, but it recharges relatively quickly. Like in an hour and a half, it'll go from 10% to 80% charge. And then within 3 hours, I think a 3-hour window, you can go from 0 to 100% on charging capacity. So for, you go to West Yellowstone and you have a full rental setup coming in, they can go out and do 30 miles, come back in.
True afternoon. Yeah.
So that's the way that the rental fleets are going to go in West Yellowstone.
Probably
because they, when I was at Arctic Cat, I remember talking to some of the guys up there at West Yellowstone at the park, and they want best available technology as far as emissions and stuff for all the animals and stuff up in the national parks. And so I could see the national parks starting to require that now that this is available.
Yeah, and it's kind of an end user green mentality, because it's certainly not cleaner overall to produce.
Right. But
the battery technology and everything. Who knows? I'm not saying that for fact. I don't really know. That's just my ignorant Idahoan speculation on all this. But you're right.
Agree.
Like you get rid of the gasoline, you get rid of the 2-stroke oil,
you get rid of
the belt. There's no dry belt. So your maintenance goes way down. And it's quiet. Yeah, it's absolutely quiet. Like Jerry Matthews and I were riding side by side, kind of racing, honestly, but
just talking.
And we were talking. Yeah, we were full throttle, 25, 30 miles an hour, and just talking side by side. But yeah, they had a little course set up for us, and we were racing. We were trying to cut each other off and everything. But so they had 2 keys. They had the tour key, which is like speed limited to 25 miles an hour, and then they had the guide key, which was speed limited to like 30 or 35, so that the guide can maintain the group a little bit better. It's not. So I first spoke about the MXZ Turbo R with water methanol injection. The electric snowmobile is not that. It could be that. It could go faster than the MXZ Turbo, but for a couple minutes. I mean, the capability is there for electricity to go faster than anything that this gasoline stuff is producing. But the whole idea with the electric snowmobile is just tourism, and that's where it's going. I think we're in the early stages. Maybe I don't think the technology allows for anything to go electric in the mountains at this point, just because your range.
Yeah, battery tech isn't quite there.
No.
And honestly, like, we live in a rural area, not to get off on that, but I mean, you got to go to Utah. Battery tech's not there. If you want to go ride dirt bikes all day with your buddies, you're not going to make it on a battery. So, but that's a great start, and I'm sure it'll improve over time. So.
Yeah, and that's the problem with electric. From my understanding of what they were explaining is your window of load is so big on electric. Like a gasoline engine can vary in miles per gallon. A little bit. It'll definitely vary if you're in deep snow climbing versus on hardback trail. Mm-hmm. An electric engine, or electric motor, and the battery capacity, that range varies significantly more if your load is high or low. Mm. So it's not really an application that's going to find its way into the mountains anytime soon.
Interesting.
The one other thing I wanted to point out on this electric snowmobile, it weighs the same as a Grand Touring internal combustion dry weight. So without fuel, so the electric is overall lighter, basically, because by the time you put gasoline into the other one, you're going to be a little bit heavier. It was cool. It was definitely something I wasn't expecting to spend a little bit of time that day riding an electric snowmobile, but it was cool.
That's cool.
So yeah, there's that.
You want more questions?
Yeah, a couple more.
Okay. Hey, this one's for you, Broc, from Brogan Z-Man. I don't know. I'm probably saying that wrong. Why buy a Ski-Doo over an Arctic Cat?
That's a tough one. I like Arctic Cats. Right now, I would say I would buy a Ski-Doo over an Arctic Cat for that Turbo R motor.
It's just it. I was talking to an ambassador who is dealing with aftermarket turbos still, and it's just like yep. I told him, man, I completely forgot that not everybody's on factory turbos, and that there are people out there still trying to tune a turbo to get 200 horse and fighting it every day.
Right. Yeah. No,
and I feel bad for you, man, because it's so cool over here on these factory turbos.
They're great, aren't they?
Oh my gosh.
So for the options, that's a good idea. And this one probably, there's no answer. I don't know that you know an answer, but will Ski-Doo make a mid-sized sled so kids don't have to go from a 200 to a 600?
They've got the Neo. The Summit Neo. That's exactly what that is. And it's cheaper than the Blast. Like it's a sweet
So where
sled.
does the Neo fall in that? If we're
So the Neo is it's a 600. Isn't it a 600?
It's a 600, but it's basically
it's detuned.
Detuned to like a 400.
Yeah.
So
nice. And I think we hit on this. I mean, here, Peterbilt 736, I keep seeing improved spindle geometry, but can't find any specifics. I think we covered that probably enough. Or
Yeah, it's just an increased trail. So it brings the ski bolt back closer to the bottom of the spindle rather than pushing it out forward. They push it out forward on the Summit Expert and the X because in deep snow it just makes it easier to turn.
Nice.
But that's where the twitch comes from. And so they increase the trail, bring that ski back a little bit so that it has more natural tendency to keep the ski straight in bumpy trails.
Nice.
That it for those?
Done. Yeah. Most of the rest we've covered pretty good. So
okay. Well, if you got anything else you want to hit on these Ski-Doos, I think we've covered everything.
I think we're good.
All right. Well, we're going to be back on them here in a few days. And I think we'll be on one for the rest of the season as well, on one of these Freeride turbos. So looking forward to that. So do yourself a favor, go to snowwest.com and subscribe to the magazine. The March 2023 issue is going to come out with all the news on the 2024s. It's a good asset if you're trying to decide what to order, and it's a lot of good information. You can subscribe to SnoWest, get 7 issues a year. We have digital version, we have print version. A lot of good information, a lot of great photos, a lot of cool new products, a lot of stuff you're not going to see trying to find and scroll through Instagram. Speaking of Instagram, we also have at SnoWest Magazine, our Instagram account. A lot of good content there. We try to mix it up pretty good. Go to snowwest.com as well and order some merch. We've got, we're working on some hoodies. Got some new hoodies coming out here pretty quick. New shirts, new hats, new style, a lot of new stuff. And subscribe to our podcast. You can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. We're now on Amazon Podcasts. I didn't know there was an Amazon podcast, but we're now on Amazon Podcasts. And you can also watch our podcasts, the ones that we capture video of. You can watch those on our YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe to the SnoWest Show on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss an episode. This is a direction that we're going in, that we're going to do most of our reviews and testing and recaps over a podcast. So be sure to check that out. But thank you for listening, and thanks for coming in for the show.